How soon will Jackson Dart become the starting quarterback for the New York Football Giants?
So, Grinny, I'm going to go the first weekend in October. They're going down to New Orleans to play the Saints, and he's probably going to be facing another rookie quarterback in Tyler Shough. You don't want to start in the first 4 weeks. They play the Dallas Cowboys, they play the Kansas City Chiefs, they play the Commanders, and also the Los Angeles Chargers. Let his first start come when they go down to New Orleans.
I like that. I like the timing. Graziano, let's talk about Washington. Jaden Daniels, sophomore slump or jump for the young star?
I got to predict jump. I think this kid's got what it takes. He's in a great situation. They've built up around him. He really connected with the coaching staff. It's a coaching staff headed by Dan Quinn that has some experience and knows what it takes to kind of take the next step off of that promising first year. I think the Commanders are legit, and I think Jaden Daniels is even better in year 2 than he was in year 1.
All right, and then Mike T, the Dallas Cowboys with that addition, George Pickens, does it make them a playoff team?
Yes, I think they are on the periphery of making the playoffs. Not only Pickens, but they added Javonte Wilkins. They've drafted Tyler Booker. And then on the other side of the ball, they got back a couple of good players this year from injuries. DeMarion Overshone, Trayvon Diggs. I think they've had a sneaky good offseason. I believe in Brian Schottenheimer. I think this team will be much improved. They're not going to be flashy as maybe some of these Cowboy teams have in the past, but I think they're going to be meaningfully better.
Yeah, look, I mean, and they won 7 games last year, playing a lot of their season without their starting quarterback. So they weren't all that for all the talk. Look, the attention the Cowboys get is both a blessing and a curse if you were them. Sometimes we overstate how bad things are when they don't look as good as we want them to. Harry, you're my receiver, so I've asked you to put together a little tape for us. What exactly is the addition of George Pickens going to look like and mean for Dak Prescott in this offense?
Yeah, Granny. So in this very first play, it's a simple, what we call a 3-step slant. And you're going to see George Pickens win his one-on-one matchup. Does a great job. He's a natural hands catcher, plucks the ball out of the air, but he's not satisfied once he catches the football. Does a great job. 4 defenders right there, but none of them gets him down, and it's off to the races for a touchdown. Now you're going to see this play versus the Washington Commanders. Great job versus man coverage, running a corner route. The quarterback throws it inside, but it doesn't matter because of the body control and the way that George Pickens can twerk his body and still come up with the catch. And last but not least, 3rd and 1 situation, one-on-one on the outside. He's a 1B to CeeDee Lamb's 1A, wins his matchup again, and it's off to the races for a touchdown. This young man is going to be unbelievable for this offense, and also Dak Prescott is going to also take a lot of pressure off of CeeDee Lamb on the opposite side.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no question. The physical ability, it is equal to just about any player at the position in the entire league. And then let's talk about, let's be real here, okay, Mike T? He's in a contract year. You were a general manager. This is a young man who was playing for a lot of money here. When you were a GM, how much would you take that into account when you were considering making an acquisition?
A big factor, Green. If you go back to those good Jet teams, Santonio Holmes, Braylon Edwards, those were guys that either had 1 or 2 years left on their deal. You're going to get the best of whatever they have. And going back to what Harry said as well, Greeny, George Pickens is going to be a point scorer. It's really hard to double both CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, who's a really good tight end, and George Pickens. So I think he'll have an exceptionally good year and be productive, especially in the red zone. So that would be a good problem for Dallas to have in terms of trying to lock him up for a long-term deal. I think he will be a meaningful addition to their team.
Graziano, I mean, if it is possible that the Dallas Cowboys could fly under the radar, but with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and if this winds up working out as well as it can with Pickens, that could be a pretty lethal combination.
Yeah, look, when Dak Prescott has had fully healthy seasons, the Cowboys have been a playoff team almost every single time. So the fact that he's back matters to a significant degree. It's part of the reason they feel good about bringing in George Pickens, even though there are some questions about him based on his history in Pittsburgh in terms of, being in and out a little bit attention-wise to some details. But he's 24 years old. They think they can get the best out of him. They think their leadership structure with Dak Prescott at the head of it in terms of the locker room is going to help with that. And Mike T talked about all those guys they're getting back on defense. I think you were absolutely right. To win 7 games in a season where your quarterback gets hurt halfway through is not unimpressive. And I think it would be foolish to overlook the Cowboys as a possible contender in the NFC East.
All right, we will roll on here. Always room for football in the conversation. We'll get back to the basketball as we can. You can check this out. The Pittsburgh Steelers do indeed play on a road trip to Chicago in Week 12. Dan Graziano, Mike Tannenbaum joining the conversation. Graz, I admit it. The fact that he knew that the Steelers played in Chicago felt relevant to me. I'm ashamed to acknowledge that on the air, but it did. What did you make of it, and what, if anything, are we hearing as they head into OTAs?
Yeah, what Aaron Rodgers likes the most is attention and being the center of it. So obviously he's enjoying this. He looks like he's enjoying it, and good for him. What to make of it is that he's seriously considered joining the Pittsburgh Steelers, which we already knew. But if he's seriously considering joining them, sure, he knows where they go for their road trips this year. He could probably tell you the rest of their road schedule as well. But in terms of are we hearing anything new, no. As of yesterday, when I was checking on this, no. People I'm talking to still don't know whether Aaron Rodgers will ultimately show up. The Steelers start their OTA practices tomorrow, and they have a mandatory mini camp in June 10th, I believe 10th, 11th, and 12th. So those are key dates to watch. It's not necessarily a deadline. Steelers still have not given Aaron Rodgers one of those, but if you're looking for, tentpole calendar events, those are two that are coming up that could potentially offer at least an opportunity to maybe ask somebody where things stand.
Mike T., you were a general manager in two different places. If this was a place you were the general manager, would you have a deadline?
Yes, it was about 6 weeks ago, Greeny, and here's why. You're trying to win the AFC North in 2025, and you're trying to compete against Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens and Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Think about all the reps those teams have. If you look at this graphic here, look at all those reps, look at all those games those teams have played with Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Higgins, and Chase. So, Greeny, think about as good as DK Metcalf, we hope and believe, and as you mentioned in the meeting this morning, sure, they threw one time at UCLA, but they are massively behind this season in terms of reps and experience if they want to meaningfully compete in the AFC North.
Yes, Rodgers had multiple completions to DK Metcalf on a practice field at UCLA a couple of months ago, and that is the entirety of their connection. I want to play what Wilbon said here on Friday, Harry, and then I'll let you start the conversation with it there. Michael Wilbon was sitting in this chair, and I think he spoke for a lot of people about the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers. This is what he said.
Making a mistake if they let him anywhere near their building. What are we talking about? Do people just look at actually what happens in sports? Aaron Rodgers hasn't been relevant as a quarterback in the NFL for 4 or 5 seasons. What are we talking about? The Steelers are not, the hallmark of the Pittsburgh Steelers is not stupidity. Smart organization that makes right moves over decades. And they're going to bring Aaron Rodgers in with all his drama into that room? Really? The Mike Tomlin we know. He's going to deal with that nonsense? What? For a guy who can't play. I'm not talking, yes, he will wear a gold jacket. He's earned it. He's not wearing it now. He's not going to play in a gold jacket. The fact that we have now spent this much time talking about Aaron damn Rodgers Memorial Day weekend is insane. Stop with Aaron Rodgers. Stop.
I've never seen Dan Graziano that happy. I've known the man for years. Harry, is he right? I mean, is he right? Are the Steelers actually waiting for something that isn't going to do them that much good in the first place?
Whew. I think you can go both sides of the spectrum with this, right? We've seen the Pittsburgh Steelers have the ability to make the playoffs with incompetent quarterback play. Now, what they're probably hoping for when it comes to Aaron Rodgers is not that he's going to be the MVP that we've seen him be in this past, but be better than Russell Wilson, be better than we've seen, Mason Rudolph be. And then when I mention the name Mason Rudolph, I say to myself, well, you're not going into the AFC North and then better yet the AFC trying to win versus Mahomes and everyone else with Mason Rudolph as your quarterback. So I think their best bet right now is Aaron Rodgers, even though it will make you do back flips and front flips at the same time.
Danny?
I think Wilbon's absolutely right, and I think that he's giving us the emperor has no clothes, right? Like everybody wants to talk about Aaron Rodgers going to the Steelers, and that's their hope. This is not MVP Aaron Rodgers. This is not 2020 Aaron Rodgers. This is a shell of that. He was a bad quarterback in the NFL last season. He was not markedly better last season than Mason Rudolph was for the Tennessee Titans when he played. So I think what the Steelers are doing here is they assessed the quarterback market this offseason. They didn't really love any of the options, and so they didn't really stretch. They didn't try and outbid the Jets for Justin Fields. They didn't get into the Sam Darnold thing. I think Aaron Rodgers is fine if he shows up, and I think the Steelers are probably fine if he doesn't. Would they try and trade for Kirk Cousins, another flawed option at this point in his career? Maybe, but they kind of like Mason Rudolph. He's been in that building. He helped them get to the postseason 2 years ago with the way he played in December, and I just don't think the Steelers are sitting there hanging on Aaron Rodgers' decision as if he says no, we're going to have to fold the franchise and not even play the 2025 season. I just don't think that's how they're looking at it.
Mike T, final word.
Yeah, I think there's another aspect to this, Greeny. Will Howard, if Aaron Rodgers is a Band-Aid for a year, because again, he'll be 42, Greeny, let's see what we have in Will Howard. He won a national championship, 6th-round pick, and maybe by the end of the season they have something or they don't, and that will inform their plans for 2026 and beyond. But we all know about Mike Tomlin's legendary streak. I agree with Graz from a standpoint, even as a Band-Aid, it does seem odd to sign somebody so old, so late in the process. If he had signed in March, he was there for the whole offseason, that would make sense. But we'll see how it goes. I do think Will Howard will have a chance to play at some point, though, this season.
Well, wait and see on that. I mean, making the trade for DK Metcalf sort of suggests you're a team that's trying to win and you're being aggressive about it, and then the rest of it feels like you're sitting back and thinking about the future. Really complicated times. And
bây giờ mắc nhựa mối tiếp theo vào, luân phiên cho đến hết. Mắc tiếp vào này.